In this video we'll look at how to play the guitar solo for No More Tears. So we'll break this up into sections as we go. So here's the first 2 bars. So that will be about as easy as it gets for this solo. There's some crazy bits later. That's all across the G string, a very vocal phrase. Now, I've looked up loads of lessons and tabs for this, and they're always a bit different, so mine might be different than one you've done before. I went for a video on YouTube of Zakk Wylde playing this just in front of a webcam or something, so this is pretty close to what he's playing there. Okay, so I'll just go through that slowly. I won't talk too much more about this phrase because you can see the tabs there. Then the next 2 bars we've got some bends. So bending a full step and pulling off the 10. And then 2 more full step bends on the 12. And you know, liberally apply vibrato throughout this. Even if it's not exactly the recorded version, you'll see like Zakk Wylde applying vibrato to different notes sometime. So, you know, you can use your judgment for that. Next bit. So another bend on 12. Then apply some vibrato to 11 on that G string. Then kind of slide off and slide back on again. Play 11 again, but I would suggest use your first finger when you go into this next phrase. So that's 11, 12, 14, similar to some other bits. Then you go to the B string and do a bend on fret 13. It's a full step bend. Again, if you look at different versions of this, sometimes the bend goes right up or there's a bit of a delay. I just let it delay a wee sec before bringing it up the full step. And then just to finish that bar, you've got this bend part here. Now what you can do throughout this solo is Zakk Wylde really beats the strings hard, the other strings that he's not wanting to sound out necessarily. So you've got to get your coverage over here, your muting pretty good. So if I took that last phrase I did, I'm only playing the high E string, but I'm pretty much whacking the other strings like a strum with the pick, but I'm trying to mute those other strings. And I know Zakk Wylde likes Gary Moore, and that's a big Gary Moore thing where you're whacking those strings that you're not necessarily wanting to sound out. And on that phrase there, like I see like people play it up in a different position. That's cool if you want to do it that way, it's the same notes. And let me link that phrase with the next parts that are coming just to put it in context. So then you move up to 15 on the high E string, do a full step bend and pull off to 13. And again, if you kind of whack the strings, you're trying to mute out the other string noise, but occasionally letting a bit of bleed in there, which you're going to see very shortly actually won't sound too bad as long as it isn't a complete mess. And we'll keep going to some big bends here. So you're doing some big full step bends on 15 there. So you've got one for a half note, then a couple for a quarter note. And as you keep going there, applying that bend to the 15th fret, what you'll notice as you get to the bar after that is there's the 15 on the B string that's bleeding in a little bit. Again, if you watch a live version or different people, Zakk Wylde, other people playing this, you'll get a bit of string bleed, maybe a bit more often. You know, it has this real punchy, cool sound, so you can get a bit of that in there if you want, more so than on the tab I've just given you. Something to look out for, there's something that comes up sometimes. You'll play that 13 in the high E string, and it sounds like there's like a little tiny quarter note bend on it. Now when you're in the middle of ripping this solo out, it's hard to do that quickly, but there's definitely a little bit of bend or vibrato on that 13th fret there. Okay, that concludes the easier parts of the solo, because after that it gets pretty challenging here. These are really fun pentatonic licks to learn though, and as we're going, this is all part of your D minor pentatonic scale, although we're tuned down obviously. So you'll see the blues note come up as well in here. So I'm going to play the next two bars here. Really fun to play this, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. What I'll do is I'll just play this next bar. This is bar 10, slow. And I've added that 10 part to of the next bar just because it'll make sense for your ear to resolve that bit there. Then I'll continue with that part. So this is all in your pentatonic box. What I will suggest is you might want to get rid of the little finger at times, although it looks like Zakk Wylde really uses his little finger a lot, especially for some big bends as well. I don't think you should necessarily get rid of it if it's a weaker part of your playing. You know, force yourself to do it anyway. But those bends in there on 13 and stuff, I like to get the third finger there, get the other finger supporting, and you've got these double stops in there. So just lay the finger down and try and get those two strings sounding out. And what you'll see in here that's going to come up is you'll do this little kind of bluesy bend on 12 of G and B. So have both notes fretted and then just pull the string down for like a half note bend to get the blues note. And you're actually going to pull off the 10 and play those two strings, but it's going to hopefully sound out as a pull off with your first finger just sitting there. Just like that. Next bar has some more of that kind of thing. Now I find this one of the more tricky bits to play in because it's hard to tell what's exactly going on. I put dead notes in on my tab where you see the X's, but I see other tabs where that's occurring. They have 12 on the D string in there where you're having to come back to play that. You could pan mute that note, or you can just make it kind of a dead note or a rest note in the middle of it. Let me just play it slow. I've got those kind of rest notes more than dead notes in there, but you can try and get that 12 in if you can manage. Like that. So the next lick has a bend on 13 from the previous bar, then going into all this kind of triplet craziness. So I find this pretty difficult, this lick, and it is very hard to tell exactly what's being played, but this is pretty close. Something like that in there, okay? It's hard to get it exactly the same all the time when you're in the middle of the solo. Now what I would suggest, if you can't get it down exactly, you've got probably some blues licks, some pentatonic licks to draw upon in your own playing. You can kind of improv that bit a little bit, because you probably know your pentatonic first position pretty well. Okay, so if you don't get it exactly, you can kind of bluff it until you can get more proficient at it. Next bit. So just get that phrase in there. And then what we've got after that is some more dead note stuff where you're kind of doing a strum and just hitting muted notes in between some fretted notes. So I'll put that into context. I'm going to play the dead note at the end of the phrase we just did and then into the next bar before the crazy shred bits at the end. So in there, the other bits aren't too bad, it's just a bit fiddly and awkward at first, but try and get those dead notes in just with a little like strum on the highest two strings between those bends that you're doing. So that's all I'm doing, just hitting the second and first string between those notes. And then again, to resolve the end of that bar in the phrase, you've got this little kind of quarter note bend on 13 of the high E string. Okay, into the shred runs, which in one way are easier than all that. In terms of just learning the patterns, it's much more visually easy, I find. But then the speed is something else, so it might take you a while to get the speed up. So we've got like groups of 6 notes in here. This is working across your D minor pentatonic positions. Okay, if you know that already, you'll see some familiar shapes here. So I'll break down this first part of it, and then all you'll see is we just kind of move the idea up the scale. Just learn that phrase, okay? Now for picking in this, I've put in what I do. I'm like an economy picking guy. You know, I do a lot of sweep picking and shred stuff, so that's what feels easy to me. Those 2 consecutive upstrokes in there, where I'm kind of pulling the pick and gliding across the high E and B string, and I just repeat that pattern over and over for everything. But Zakk Wylde might be doing all alternate picking on this, other guys might as well. Just whatever works for you, but that's what I do there. So that's a group of 6 notes, repeat that 4 times. Then all we're doing is going to shift that idea. So that was 13 and 10 on your 2 highest strings, then it's going to be 15 and 13. shift that up again, 17 and 15 on the high E, and then that's 18 and 15 on the B string. Now you'll notice the ending just changed there. So you do 3 lots of that pattern. Then the 4th time you do it, it's just this. So once we finish that part, the next 2 notes are part of like the next shred run that are like little sweep arpeggios. So you've got 15 on the B, 13 on the high E, and you're going to be hammering on and pulling off the 18. So it's this little pattern. Now what I would recommend is just practice that. Get your motions and your muscle memory programmed in for that. And again, me personally, that 15 on the B string, I will do that with an upstroke. Every time I come back, 13 on the high E will be a downstroke. So I'll kind of do that like a sweep, and I'm sure Zakk Wylde does that too, and anyone that plays it, because it's very fast. So that's your first pattern. So just follow the tab to get that down for yourself, then shift it up 2 frets, exact same pattern. And again, just work on that little part. And then we've got to work into a big bend from fret, that's 20. Just give it a bend and some vibrato at the end. And you're bending a C note up to a D note in this case. So I'll put the whole shred section together here for you. There we go, hope you enjoyed that. So if you did, give the video a like and tell me how you get on with that. Very fun to play once you get it down. Keep in mind, if you can't get all the licks right, you can improv little bits of it and just do your best with the speed. It'll just take some time to get that right up to speed.